Digimon Story Time Stranger expansion predictions, let's talk about it. So, as you know, Digimon Con has come and gone months ago. Right now, at the time of recording, we're at the beginning of announcement season for video games, which is my favorite time of year, or one of my favorites anyways. We got State of Play coming up, we got Summer Game Fest coming up, we have the Xbox Showcase, and then the Summer Nintendo Direct, which is in probably the second half of the month or so. That's where we are right now. But let's talk about Digimon Story Time Stranger. Now, at Digimon Con, I believe it was, or even before then, they announced that they're developing an expansion-size DLC. They were very purposeful in their wording there, too. The fact that they said expansion size, because they've released about 3 different DLCs so far, back to back to back in very quick succession, which means that those were either prepped ahead of time or had a low development cycle, they were very affordable, and the content was debatable as far as size goes. Quality and writing also kind of varied, and that's also a matter of personal opinion. The 3 DLCs being the ones you're seeing now on screen. So, we'll break those down a little later, but generally those games gave about 4 hours each or so of just gameplay, and I found them to be enjoyable and interesting to varying degrees. Now, I want to talk today about the next journey for Digimon Story Time Stranger, and hopefully maybe we'll even hear about it this week. If not, oh well, we'll hear about it soon enough because the expansion is due for next year. So what do you guys think that the expansion is going to cover? Well, I have a very specific theory on what the expansion is going to cover, and that is this absolute fraud of a deity in the Digimon Time Stranger universe. That's right, the one and only user of nothing and has contributed nothing, Kunlun from Shambhala. Let's dive into it a little bit. Spoilers ahead for Digimon Story Time Stranger and the DLCs that have already dropped. So let's get full understanding first of what we're looking at here. When it comes to DLCs versus expansions, they are very purposeful in those wording. Basically, a DLC is more of a bite-sized or smaller experience that can vary from just a few items to a small amount of content. They are priced relatively affordably, as we saw with packs 1, 2, and 3 being about $10, I think it was. Now, Pack 1 was called Alternate Dimension. It was released on December 8th, 2025, and centered on Kiyoko Kuremi, and features the new Digivolution routes, about 5 different Digimon. At all the DLCs added 5 new megas. I wish they had more, but here we are. They had 5 new megas each, and Alternate Dimension also introduced a common antagonist, Parallelmon, who was a shock to see, because he's not really featured anything outside of a one-time spin-off one-shot manga, which was very charming, and he doesn't get any real screen time or space, so it was amazing to see him finally in a mainstay form of media like Time Stranger. He's a reoccurring antagonist because he jumps between parallel dimensions and timelines and whatnot, and that's how we end up in these odd situations. We never truly bring an end to him, though. The second DLC was called GAKU-RAN, which introduced the Banchos, which is my favorite DLC. I found it to be charming. The use of the term collab, the fist bumps, their personalities. I just found the Bancho bunch to be very endearing. They don't get enough love and personalization in the past, so seeing them come together and actually have personalities and the ways they interact meant a lot to me, and it was my favorite DLC out of the bunch. And then there was Anti-Paradox, which brought in some concepts from the X-Evolution movie and X-Antibody Digimon. Again, X-Antibody Digimon don't often get too much game stay these days, so it was great to see a few of them, even if they were all Royal Knights. I'm a little Royal Knight tired out myself, but tell me how you guys feel about that in the comments. Point is, all these DLCs were focused experiences. They all revolved around the same antagonist, and they all added about 5 megas each. Now, when it comes to terminology of using expansion, we should expect that to be a little more expensive, probably about $20 to $30 is my prediction, and it's probably taking a longer time right now because the other DLCs released like month to month to month, almost back to back to back. The second one released in January and the third one in March, so there's only 1-2 months between each of those. This time we're seeing a year gap. I mean, it's going to be a much larger piece of content overall. And like I said, it's probably 20 to 30 bucks. I expect to add a lot more than 5 Digimon and be a more satisfying bit of content, which is exciting for Digimon because I've never really seen Digimon do something like that as far as expansion to a game goes. The last time I can remember something like that is the re-digitized games that got like remade and added extra content with Decoded. But even those didn't get properly westernized before, so this is a true first for Digimon, at least as far as I know. If I'm wrong, let me know. Anyways, now we know what we're talking about from DLC to expansion, right? and we know what each of those different DLCs kinda covers for the most part. Now let's jump back to what we think the new expansion's gonna cover. It's gonna cover one of two things in my mind. We've already touched on one, which I'm gonna dive more deeper into in a moment, which is our boy from Shambhala Kunlun, who I think is an absolute fraud and contributed absolutely nothing. I will go on my tangent there in a moment, but the other one is Parallelmon, because his storyline never truly wrapped up. He never really was brought to a definitive end. So there's a chance that he is, again, the final boss, and maybe it leads into a deeper story on how to actually finish the job with him. Maybe he'll connect us to a greater overarching story, because his ability is to travel between dimensions. So let's look at that first. So option A is Parallelmon. Let's take a dive into what Parallelmon is as far as Wikimon talks about. Now, when it comes to Wikimon, it describes Parallelmon as a mutation Digimon that can freely travel back and forth between the digital worlds of other dimensions. It is a fiendish being that devours the data of Digimon in worlds it has crossed into, and its goal is unclear. As the world always falls into chaos whenever the elusive Parallelmon appears, research teams have identified its arrival as a disaster. Its special move is absorbing Digimon with a beam fired from its eye with Absorbent Bang. When something besides a Digimon gets hit directly by the beam, they are sent flying into another dimension. In addition, it has Endless Trance, in which it launches an unilateral attack from the countless gates it opens around the enemy. So, Parallelmon jumps between dimensions, eats different Digimon in those dimensions. Now when we talk about digital worlds in different dimensions, that means we have more possibilities for game crossovers. So Parallelmon could take us to a previously seen digital world. We could be seeing the world from Next Order or the first Digimon World game. We could be seeing the world from Digimon World 3, which is a fan favorite. We could be jumping back to Cyber Sleuth and Hackers Memories versions of the digital world and seeing more of those characters, or maybe all of the above, coming together and interacting with those different flows to figure out a way to unite and take down Parallelmon. Or maybe they'll end up ending the anime. If they do, they'll probably send them over to the Adventures guys, because it's always with the Adventure guys. That's a topic for another time. But it could theoretically also tie into Beat Break, which would be my preference on that front. I would like to either see more of the games be combined together into more of a universal story and come together to face down this cross-dimensional threat of Parallelmon, or if we're gonna pick an anime, let's throw Beat Break in there. It's the newest show, it's doing great, it's charming, it's got a lot of great new Digimon that can be added to the roster in the game. I feel like you can do a great job tying everything together, and by the time the expansion drops, we'll probably have seen the megas and the show might even be over by then. So it'll be the perfect time to add them to a game, to add them to the roster, including their evolution lines. That's what we could see with Parallelmon. But personally, I think we're gonna go the Shambhala route. Let's talk about it. Again, minor spoilers, or kind of just spoilers in general, for Digimon Story Time Stranger. This gentleman is Kunlun, who is the ruler of the Shambhala server. Let me explain servers real fast. When it comes to Digimon games and the digital world as a whole, we have seen only 3 servers, or quote-unquote continents is the best way you can kind of think about them. They're separated worlds where different stories take place and different Digimon exist. Most Digimon media you have ever seen takes place in the Yggdrasil server. Now, Yggdrasil server is where the Royal Knights are, and we've seen them time and time again with Omnimon, Gallantmon, Magnamon, and the like. You're right, we've seen the Royal Knights. They don't often get a lot of personality as much as they did in Time Stranger, in my opinion, and they are led by King Drazel, who is represented by this character here, and who Marcus Damon famously punched in the face. Now, we also have Homeos. Homeos is the ruler of the Iliad server, and the Iliad server is where we saw Time Stranger take place. This is where we finally got to see a great personalization and the coming together and banding together of the Olympus 12 in cinematic stage-like fashion, being the crux of the storyline for Time Stranger, and it was amazing, because we haven't seen Iliad in this fashion before. Like, this is the first time we've actually had a solid story that's not in Yggdrasil. Even though Homeros, I keep saying Homeros was kind of zonked out the entire time, but the Iliad server brought a bunch of new Digimon, a sense of adventure, new sense of discovery. It was amazing. And this is their chance to lead us into Shambhala, because this is something they've been building up to for a while. Shambhala is the third server that was recently announced in the last like 2 or 3 years or something. It's a relatively new concept to Digimon. It is a Far Eastern server based on Chinese, Japanese, Korean, and Middle Eastern mythologies. Those all come together to create the space of Shambhala. And Shambhala is ruled over by Kunlun. And he has his group as well, which I'm not quite remembering the name of the people right now, but we'll get back to that. Point is, this is something they've been building up for a while. They've been releasing card sets about Shambhala. We've seen Kunlun in Time Stranger. We keep seeing references to Shambhala in different Digimon media. It feels like they're building up to something big, and even though it may not be the anime or something right now, an expansion between Iliad and Shambhala feels like the natural progression that they're going for. We move over from Iliad and follow the expansion into a more focused story in Shambhala, but what would the plot line be there? That's where Kunlun comes in, because when it comes to the story of Time Stranger, most threads of the plot line are tied up. I felt like it tied itself very nicely. I was relatively satisfied with the ending of Time Stranger. Now, there was one thing that frustrated me the more I thought about it, because when it comes to King Drazel helping out the Iliad crew in Time Stranger, you go through this whole quest line. You go and help out optionally all of the Royal Knights one by one. You face them down all one by one. You help them overcome whatever problem they have. You see a little bit of personalization happen with them, and they come together at the end during the final boss. If you go and solve all their side quests, they will band together and like do this cool team action move against the final boss to take down his barrier and do a big chunk of damage. If you don't meet them all and do their things, then only Omnimon shows up, which is cool, but a lot less impressive than seeing all the Royal Knights band together to face the big bad. They not only do that, but they help tie up someone else's storyline as well, because there's a Machine Dramon quest in the game as well, to face a very specific Machine Dramon and tie up the storyline for the father character and what happened to the family in the past. The Royal Knights show up for that fight too, and you get to pick between them as far as who teams up with you to take that on. Now, the Royal Knights have all of this interactivity with them, which is great. I thought the personalization was fantastic in this game. Now, what about Kunlun? Kunlun brought his own member. He did not bring all 12 of his heroes. He brought our boy from Frontier, Susanomon. Now, Susanomon's a cool Digimon. A lot of people really like him. A lot of people love Frontier. The issue here is when you go do his quest line, you go face his fighters and his helpers and whatnot, and then you face off against him, earn his respect, and tell him, hey, Kunlun says go back, go help everybody. You know what they do? Not that. They don't show up in the final fight. They don't show up anywhere else. Once you solve their thing, they have contributed nothing. Nothing of value. The entire reason Kunlun brought over Susanomon and his minions was to help with the situation in Iliad, and they contributed nothing besides goofing off at the Colosseum. And the more I think about it, the more it frustrates me. Because I'm like, you had this cool Digimon, you had the moment to give him a moment to shine, just like the Royal Knights always get, and you had a real chance to use him and bring Shambhala to the limelight, but he was nowhere to be found at the end. He contributed nothing! But what if there's reason for that? What if that reason is what ties us into the expansion? Where were the Shambhala characters? Why wasn't Susanamon helping like he was supposed to? Where does all this fit together? These are plot lines that they can work with as they lead us into the expansion and place it in the Shambhala server, giving us a glimpse of what that world could look like, giving us just a hint of what it's like in the world of Shambhala. And all the new Shambhalan Digimon that are being introduced via the card game and whatnot, they can all make appearances as like whole evolution lines. That is their chance, and then maybe the next full game can actually be fully placed in Shambhala, but this expansion could be the perfect opportunity to just give us a taste, just a little bit, just a tiny bit. Anyways, that's what I think is going to happen with the Digimon expansion. What my crazy wish is that I don't think is going to happen is I want to see more of the crossover Digimon event creatures show up as evolution lines. I want to see the Godzilla collab in there. I want to see those Geoerosion Digimon. I want to see the Monster Hunter Digimon in there. I want to see the Meteorot Digimon in there. I feel like they would be so much fun to see in a video game capacity, and it's not going to happen, but I am hoping that the Shambhala prediction happens. Anyways, that's what I think is going on with Digimon's expansion, and I want to hear from you guys. What do you guys think is going to happen, whether it's announced this week or not, between State of Play, between Summer Game Fest, between Xbox Showcase, or what have you, or Tokyo Game Show later, or maybe even Gamescom. Whenever it's announced, who knows how this video ages, but I want to hear from you guys down in the comments below. What are your predictions for the Digimon Story Time Stranger expansion content coming in 2027? Anyways, if you guys want to hang out with me and talk more Digimon, you can typically catch me over on Purple. If you know what that is, then you know what that is. Much love and happiness to you, and I'll catch you all next time. Bye-bye.